about the moderator this evening is that I have absolutely no business being on stage with these other women, so I will do my best, though, to pull out their stories. A quick tidbit before we get started, I've gotten to know each of them a little bit as we prepared for this, and my biggest takeaway is, one, innovation certainly does cross all industries because we have a wide swath of experience here in a lot of different sectors. The other thing is that each of these women, in addition to doing tremendous things in the business community, are leaving a legacy that's going to last far beyond themselves, whether it's the culture that they carry, the people they're mentoring, the charitable work that they're doing. These ladies are really, really inspiring. So with that, let's get started. We're going to start with Carol and come down the row. First question. You each have had quite a journey to get to where you are, probably some unexpected twists and turns along the way, probably some pivotal moments that stand out to you as being kind of like the difference or something that really kind of like created a change. Can you tell us about a memory of one of those times that stands out to you over the course of your journey?
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're saying about.
There's a turning point, as you look back to your career, right? I think there's probably certain times where it's a turning point. You made a decision, you decided to take a risk, you took a leap, you took a different role, and it kind of changed the trajectory of where you were headed.
I guess I'd start early. I joined Alberto right out of college. And I was put on this new product team. And I thought the ideas that these two guys had were really poor. Really, really poor. And so I started in July, and at Christmas, I wore a dress. And I went to school in New Orleans. It was a crepey dress that clung like craziness. So went down to our lab and asked if we could come up with a product to stop static. Ooh. And so 7 months after I started at the company, I created Static Guard.
Oh, thank you.
And then within the next 3 years, I created 3 more brands, Mrs. Dash, Molly McButter, and Baker's Joy. And Alberto is a hair care company, but my father did hair care, so I did the non-hair care. But that sort of put me on the path of innovation.
Wow, really cool. Barbara, how about you?
Yeah, I guess I had reached a point where I could no longer work at an organization that all too often prioritized the interests of leadership and of the sales team versus clients and employees at large. That was kind of the norm in financial services, unfortunately, way back when. And so that's when we saw a void and we decided, okay, a void's there. We know what clients need, we know what they want, and so let's fill it. And so we use that lens to create Capstrat and create this fiduciary advisory firm for institutional clients to help them govern pools of assets with excellence. And we use that same then holistic lens. We defined it more than just investing and creating excellence in your investment outcomes, but really building great process and great governance. And that leads to continuous success in a long-term, consistent way. We did that with our private wealth business, and then our women's forum. We saw a void in the women's market and women's communities, and we really felt that I started my career and it was elbows out. There was one seat at the table, and that was it. So we had kind of a scarcity environment. So we really wanted to create a culture where women actively supported one another, and we knew women wanted to do that as well. And we also knew that women really define success more broadly, that it's our personal well-being, our spiritual, our emotional health, our wellness, mental health, financial health. And so we created our Women's Forum to help support the personal, professional, and financial success and fulfillment of women by building community, offering programs without having any requirements for their status or their age or industry or the role they played. And that started with 25 women having lunch and learning about the neuroscience of change from Robin Ross, fabulous coaches in the audience, to now over 7,000 women we reach over our digital platform nationally and overseas to really continue to empower women.
That's great. Nadia, what about you? Okay.
felt like I wanted to clap.
I know.
We can clap. Thank
We can clap. It's okay.
We can clap. Yeah, right? Amazing. Thank you. I'm going to give two examples. The first one, I'm going to go way back and start with my mother. Because when I was in 7th grade, I'm a scientist, of course, so that's important. When I was in 7th grade, I was taking a math class, and it was an advanced math class, and it was too hard for me. Not too hard. It was hard for me, I should say. And I wasn't getting an A, and it was way lower than that. And it was just, I remember going to my mother, and I cried, and I said, this class is too hard. I can't do it. I don't know why I'm in it. And she said, I'd rather have you take a class that's too hard for you and fail than take a class that's too easy and not learn anything. And that stayed with me forever, because I think all the time about doing things not because they're easy, but because they're impactful. Right?
Yeah.
And then the other example is something more recent in terms of what really spurred me into leadership. And this was when I was a professor at University of Illinois before starting at Chicago. And we were applying for this big collaborative grant. It was something like a $20 million grant that was really important for materials research. And we had tried as a group to get this grant for 12 years and failed. And I was part of every single failed grant. It's a lot of work to put these things together. And after 12 years, I was kind of fed up, and I decided that I knew the right way to do it, and that I could do it better than other people could. And I went to the leadership at the university and said, okay, I'm willing to run this grant, to propose it, to lead the whole thing, only if you let me do it exactly how I want to do it, and there's no one else who's leading it, it's just me. And they agreed, and we were successful.
Wow, congratulations. That deserves applause.
Thanks. And I do want to point out that one of the lessons is that I had to ask for it. It wasn't. I knew that I could lead, but it wasn't given to me either. It was something where I had to go out there and just say, I can do this.
I love that, and I think just from personal experience with generations coming into the workforce, I think that's a really important message. Sometimes there's an expectation of waiting for things to come to you and leaders to kind of pull you up. And I think the lesson is you got to take ownership yourself. Okay, Maria.
Thank you. No, and these are so inspiring. So it's so hard to follow three amazing women. But for me, I think it would be something early in my career at the Alzheimer's Association. I've been there for 21 years. And came from academia where I had a big voice because it was your PI, your principal investigator, and so you run your own research. And so coming to the association was a change. It's a nonprofit, and it was a big risk for me. And at that time, 21 years ago, it was primarily male leadership. That has changed now. It's primarily female leadership, and actually my own team is 90% leadership. Some of my leaders are here actually in the room.
All right, we got applause there too.
Which is amazing, amazing support. But one of the first things that I heard when I was trying to really make things happen for the Alzheimer's Association from my boss, older white male, said to me, you are going to be in the room to be seen and not heard. I was like, what? That doesn't work for me. So I made it a point to really work on my own with a small team that has now grown to a very significant team, and I make sure that that team knows that they're there to be heard and seen. So that was a pivotal moment for me.
Love that. Yes. All right, the theme has come out across some of your answers about what it's like to operate in more of a male-dominated environment. Recent surveys that have come out, I think McKinsey's 2025 survey had, for the 11th consecutive year, showed women being underrepresented in all roles of leadership. I think right now, women hold just 29% of C-suite roles. And that's not to say we haven't made progress. I think there's been a ton of progress. And so I would be curious to hear from a couple of you, where have we made progress? And what are the areas that we should all maybe lean into where we still have kind of some room to grow? And maybe I'll start down here with you, Maria, if that's okay.
Sure. So, with being in the science community, so I think probably Nadia and I will have an interesting and common idea about what this means, because there is no doubt that there are more women moving into STEM, and they are generally in lower positions. So when we see, we run the Alzheimer's Association's International Conference, we expect 10,000 people in London in like 2 weeks. And when we look at the demographics, and I've checked the demographics over the course of the last 10 years, it has swayed to a majority of women attending. So that's really important. It's anywhere from 53 to 56% identifying as women. So that is slowly changing, but the people at the top are not retiring. In academia, you don't have to retire until you're like 80 and can't really get to the lab. So they don't retire. And so that doesn't always leave a lot of room.
Sure.
It also is, especially if you work with animals, especially if you work in wet labs, like I did my research in, you don't have a lot of flexibility to be home. And so making those choices is challenging as you move up in the ladder. And that might be very similar to other career paths. I think we're trying to make that change, and we specifically at the organization, with the leadership, of course, of my team, focus on women leaders and ensuring that at every session, at every opportunity where we can put a male up, we have a female counterpart. Every single time, without exception. And I think that's a contribution that we can continue to make.
It's amazing. Amazing. Nadia?
Yeah. So unfortunately, in physics and engineering, the numbers are not 50%. They're more like 30% or lower. And so, we have definitely improved. And I will say, the number you quoted for women in C-suite was 29%. It was 17% a decade ago. So across the board, things have gotten a little bit better, but very, very slowly. And the pipelines are just not there. There just aren't enough women coming in. There aren't enough women staying, being encouraged to stay in. The environments still aren't right. And especially when you start looking at women of color, the numbers are minuscule, the couple percent, way, way below what you'd expect for representation numbers. So we just have a lot more work to do in terms of both introducing the opportunities for the future and making sure that the environments are such that people feel like they can make that choice to stay in the field, especially as we move into an AI and quantum-dominated world in tech. We need these pipelines. We need half the population to be forging the future for all of us.
Okay, we have the pipelines, but I think the McKinsey study talked about, unfortunately, that we're not getting sponsorship for women, that the male counterparts of women, especially early in their careers, are more often being sponsored, and they often have more than one sponsor, whereas the women's numbers are much lower. And then, once you start out there, then you slowly, can fall back pretty easily. But women start out pretty well together, but then it trails off. I think so. Sponsorship is an issue. I think another issue is that we need access to capital. Those entrepreneurs in the room know that what the numbers look like for women, and the worst numbers for women of color, in terms of getting access to capital when you're starting a business, that our male counterparts are getting much more access to capital. And then we also need to make sure that we build systems that are supportive of women. A lot of the systems we have are not designed by women, and so we don't have the flexibility, or we might not have the really ability when we need to. Our expectation is that we'll do more of the caregiving, or the expectation of society, sometimes our partners, so it detracts from our continuing progress in the business world. So, some of the things that we can do, it's interesting, research shows that women are more often evaluated based on performance versus potential, but men are evaluated based on potential and not performance. And it's not just men that do this, we do this to women too, because sometimes I think that's our mindset. I've got to really do well and then I can move on. And so I think if we need to be more aware if we hear that in our own voices, as well as call others out who happen to evaluate someone more aggressively on past performance versus their potential. Our potential is, our success that we've had is an indicator that we can handle that next opportunity in front of us. I think, those are issues that where we can help. And also, I think we need to make sure that we ask for what we deserve and what we need, and not wait to have someone tap us on the shoulder.
I think those are really good tips, and I think everyone in this room can take some of that to kind of pay it forward and help the situation. This is a celebratory event, and so I want to make sure we keep this in the vein of celebrating all things that are good. I would be really curious to go down the line quickly, starting with Carol. What's one thing that you're particularly excited about right now?
Well, on the home front, I get all of my children for the 4th of July,
Ooh,
which I have 8 grandchildren, and there'll be 20 of us. But My boys asked me to write another book, and it's going to be published shortly. It's called Innovative Philanthropy at Work. And what's so fun about it is there's 30 people that I've asked to join us in that endeavor, and they are so cool. I mean, they are people who are next door neighbors, as well as people who started Keystone Capital and Madison Dearborn Partners and the president of universities and the vice chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I mean, so it is, all these people have approached philanthropy in a totally different way, doing unique and wonderful things and making the world a different place. So I'm excited about that. It'll be coming out shortly.
Wow, we're excited too.
Wow.
Barbara.
Well, besides that, I'm getting married in August. Thanks. I'm really excited. I'm celebrating that we sold our business last fall, which means, and the fact that our clients and colleagues have landed in a great place to get access to great opportunities, that the new organization, Creative Planning, is embracing our Women's Forum, and my colleague and partner, Nancy Rizzuto, and I are integrating the Women's Forum, and it's going to become bigger and more impactful to more women there. And then in January, I get to move on to my next big impactful what's next, and I'm still trying to figure that out, but celebrating it.
That's great.
I'm excited because tomorrow I will be starting a new position at University of Chicago as the Vice President for all of research. So thank you. Yeah, so I'll be in charge of all of the operations and research strategy, including the Center for Entrepreneurship, corporate engagement, all of research grants and portfolio. And that's especially exciting right now because I think we're at a stage where research needs input from many different sectors, from corporations, from academia, from philanthropy, from government. There's quantum, there's AI. There's just so much going on, and we can use that to help both researchers plus build the impact for the community, for Chicago, for the external world. And so really excited to be able to pull all of that together.
Great. And Maria.
So I'm super excited about the conference I mentioned earlier because it is happening in London, and we will hopefully be breaking our record of 10,000 researchers, clinicians, professionals from all over the world. Usually they come from over 65 countries, and really excited to share all the latest and greatest in Alzheimer's and related dementia research. One area that I think all of you might be interested in that is going to be announced, I can't tell you the bottom line, is really a risk reduction study that happened in Latin America. It will read out. We launched it 5 years ago with private philanthropy, which many of you might have donated to the Alzheimer's Association, and we have some donors in the room actually, that contributed to these studies. It is a combination of four modalities, four things that you can do to change the way you live that improve your cognition, and actually proven improve your cognition in 2 years that will put you in a better place really to, as we go into the aging process, and all of us want to age as healthily as possible. So I'm really excited about that announcement. It is, these are bold ideas that my team and I actually came up with and carried out, asking the Alzheimer's Association to back them up with millions of dollars, up to $80 million actually in combination. And so you too can look up this recipe. The study in the United States was already published, and this is a study in Latin America that mimics that study in the United States. It's called the U.S. Pointer Study. You can find it online. It was published in JAMA, so open access, so that you too can follow that recipe. And the last thing I'll say is that, in particular, I'm really proud of having 11 countries in Latin America try to mimic this trial, because Latin Americans are the largest growing population in the United States, and we need to understand how we can reduce risk, not only here in the U.S., but also to U.S. citizens and residents that come from those countries, so we can understand how to culturally adapt these types of risk reduction strategies. And so I'm really proud of that upcoming announcement from London. So stay tuned for that. You'll be hearing all kinds of things in the news that my team and I prepared for all of you in the PR world that will come out on all of your news feeds. So really happy to have that coming up.
Outstanding.
Wow.
Well,
And of course, Mexico plays tonight, so I'm excited about that.
yeah, all right. Yes, and thank you on behalf of all of us for anything that helps our cognition moving forward. So I think we all have some reading to do on the Pointer study when we get back. A couple of you, over the course of answering that question, talked about times of transition, a new job, new stage of life. There are a lot of people in this audience who are in a time of transition, whether it's new jobs, promotions, individuals stepping back into retirement or changing industry. And so I would be curious what advice each of you have for approaching a time of transition. And maybe I'll start with you, Nadia.
Yeah. I think for any job, whether it's a new job or a continuing job, I really think about my own goals. What do I want to achieve? What's my strategy? What's my vision? Many of you are leaders or aspiring leaders, and we lead with our vision. That's our job. That's what we do. And so, in thinking of something new, I think what are my goals? How am I going to get there? What's my strategy? How do I implement this and tell the community about it? Again, as a physicist, as a scientist, I ran a research lab, and we have to write grants, and these grants last for 3 years only. So you put all of your best ideas into it, and you're really thrilled to get funded, and then 3 years later, you have to start over. You have to write another grant with all new ideas and try to get funded again. And you have to have 5 or 6 grants in parallel with all different ideas to just run a research lab. And so this is just continuous change all the time. And what we learn is that change is invigorating. It forces you to really think about new ideas. It forces you to strategize differently, and it forces you to prioritize. And so when you know what your end goal is, you think of change as this opportunity to re-strategize and reprioritize and just focus on where you want to go through that process.
I love that. I might go down to Carol. Do you have anything to add about advice during transition?
I've got a lot of it, but I'm going to pick one example. Somebody you would all know, somebody that many of you have worked with, was leaving a very, very senior position in academia. And she came to me and she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. Now, her resume is 10 times better than anybody on this stage. I mean, it's that cool. But we all have fear of failure, and we all wonder. So I said, you know what we're going to do? I'm going to pull 10 women together from all different walks of life and all different occupations. And I said, I'm going to have a dinner party, and you're going to put that to them, And I've done it now like 7 times. Wow. And it's so cool because, first of all, they validated everything she'd ever done. 2, they threw out, these are impressive people who were taking her life. She didn't know half of them, by the way. And it's like, I believe the smartest people I know ask for help. And I believe that people will give you help. In fact, I say to people, I'll never join another board, but I'll give anybody a day of my life. And, I mean, now there's 300 of you in here, so be careful. I left you a book out there. I left you all a book, so you all don't have to call me.
But the book is great, by the way. That's an exciting takeaway.
But seriously, we all can use help, and we all, if we'll be vulnerable enough to put ourselves out there and tell people what we're concerned about, especially women will help women. So ask.
Love it.
Yeah, I think, in times of transition, I think even during the same job, you always have times of transition. And I think we shouldn't be afraid of reinventing ourselves. I agree, every single time as a researcher, as a scientist, even in a nonprofit, have to reinvent kind of what we're doing, what's our next big idea, and what's our next big thing. And I do have to say that those are always moments where you're like, what am I going to do? And then when you think of the idea, how am I going to do it? For me, especially in, my team leadership here will have to forgive me, but I know I count on them to actually get everything that is in my vision executed. But a big part of that is being able to coach others to say, we don't have to do it all tomorrow. We're eating this elephant one bite at a time. So let's just take that next step, and then the next one, and then the next one. And before you know it, we're a success.
Awesome. We're going to try something a little bit interactive and to get all of you guys engaged in the conversation. So can we have our first audience poll put up on the screen, please? All right. How does this work? Do we have... All right, that's how it works. QR codes. We know how QR codes work. Okay, so the question for those of you who can't see it, what do you believe is the biggest barrier standing between you and your next level of impact or leadership? A, building the right network and sponsors. B, finding the time and resources. C, building the confidence to pursue the next big opportunity, or D, organizational or systemic barriers? Well, that's coming through. I'm curious for the panel. I was really interested to see how this would turn out, and I don't know if any of you had any hypotheses as to which one would come out on top, but they're all, actually, it's pretty even.
That's amazing.
Wow. I guess I thought one of them would stand out above the others, but they're all pretty consistent. Do any of you on the panel have thoughts about any of these topics in particular that we could kind of impart wisdom to the audience about?
I'll take the first one. I can't say it any more strongly. Smartest thing I ever did, I have 3 kids. I'm a working mom. I'm in a family-controlled business. The smartest thing I ever did was join the Northwestern Healthcare Board. I have met, people ask me who my mentors are. They're all, frankly, they're mostly men, but they're all the guys that were sitting in those rooms for over the 30 years I've been there. The only woman chair of Northwestern Healthcare, that's a mistake, but boy, did I learn things. So nobody has time. Find a not-for-profit that is very important to you and give it your all. Don't do the scut work. Find one where you look at the board members and you like who you'd be working with. Go offer your time and be somebody who talks with their feet. Lots of people give opinions. You have to be there. You have to do the work. You have to be part of it. Your networking ability on a top board is as good as it can get. So that's building the right network.
That's great advice.
Yeah, to build on that, I do think that investing in your network is really important. We often found at the Women's Forum, like, people would be really engaged. There'd be someone really engaged in the Women's Forum and contributing and an active voice, and then all of a sudden they disappear because they got a position and they stopped networking. And the best time to network is now. And I think what's so powerful is when you offer, what can I do to support you? Like, who are you trying to meet? What are you working on? And then thinking of ways to help that person, because that question and that answer comes back to you. You build that trust, you build that support, and when it's your turn, because it will be, that's where you can rely on that network to really then also ask and receive.
Can I do question 3?
Yes, please.
So this is building confidence. I think about this a lot because I think that we often ask ourselves the wrong question, not can I do this, but we should be asking, what do I want to do, right? Because one is about us and our goals and our values and what we aim for, and the other is about what we perceive and how people perceive us. And there's just a lot of noise around all the time, especially for women, right? About, are we good enough to do something? How will people perceive us? What are the interactions? If we do badly, what are people going to think? And all of that is noise because it has nothing to do with what we actually want and the steps we take to get that thing. And so I tend to be, just as I mentioned before, very, very goal-oriented and very thoughtful about whether something fits with my values, why I want to do it, what I need to do to get there, and then just tunnel vision to achieve that, right? Not just eliminating as much noise as possible and making sure that I'm really thoughtful about the steps I want to take, and that's primary all the time. So it's not, for me, not really about confidence, but really about marching toward, asking the questions about what I want and marching toward that.
That's great. Which ones do we have? Finding the time and resources?
Your network can help you create the time and resources because it'll open doors for you, I think.
When I looked at these, it was interesting because I felt like the first 3, I do think you can build a system around you that helps get them to another place. The organizational and systemic barriers are harder. And those ones, if you're someone who answered that, I think that's maybe the times where you are introspective and wondering if you're at the right place. Okay, take us inside. Each of you have to make very big decisions all the time, and that is a high-pressure role to be in, and it's especially difficult when you've got a high-stakes decision and everyone's looking to you as the leader to see what you're going to do about it and how you're going to move forward. Talk to us about your decision-making process, and maybe we'll start down here with you, Maria.
Sure. Yeah, I know that very recently we had, in 2021, we had to make a very important organizational decision about whether we were going to back an FDA-approved treatment that some folks were in the global community were skeptical about, and was highly discussed within our organization, hours and hours and hours, because it's a reputational risk. You're putting your name on the line, and there was a lot of discussion about that. And of course, at the end of the day, my organization turns to our scientific leadership, which is myself and my team, to make that scientific decision, and then we move from there. When I looked at all of that, I had to think to myself, is this the capital I'm going to spend? The capital I've worked a decade and a half at that time to elevate, not only for the organization, but for myself through my networks, through creating networks across the globe. Am I going to risk that credibility? And for what reason? The ultimate answer to me when I looked inside myself was that I had to do what was right for patients, because that's our goal. That's our mission at the organization. It is patient-focused. We're a patient advocacy group. We are an evidence-based one, but that is our focus. And then I had asked myself if I looked at this and and my mother needed this medication, would I give it to her? 100%, yes. Then that's my answer. And we went full throttle. We did receive significant criticism. We were accused of being a shill for pharma and being in their pocket. Mm-hmm. But I am comfortable with my response, and I'm comfortable and proud that the Alzheimer's Association stood up for patients in that day.
That's great. Awesome. Carol, I might come down to you. Decision-making process. How do you approach big decisions?
Before I wrote this book, I was the one that's out there. I was a very private person. I have no privacy left ever again, so I might as well tell you. I think people learn from stories, so let me tell you one of the most interesting and worst times of my life. We have two companies, the Sally Beauty Company and the consumer products that you know. Sally's 3,300 retail stores, whatever. We're going to split the business in two pieces. We're in a board meeting. The board votes 7-2 to split it. We're going to move it to the Regis Corporation. Lots of reasons we were going to do it. Okay, hard decision, did it. Went on a trip. Got a phone call that night from a woman who turned out to be my now ex-husband's girlfriend of 7 years. Didn't know about her, to say the least. But worst of all, she tells me everything that goes on in that board meeting. And she's going to go, we are a public company, family-controlled public company. She's going to go to the Chicago Tribune. Because honestly, he had told her when we split the company in two pieces and he was going to go be the chairman of Sally and I was going to be the chairman of Alberto, he would marry her. Well, he broke up with her that day. I am chairman of the board of a public company. Okay, now within a month, listen to what else happens. I called Tom Cole, who many of you probably know, who was our partner at Sidley and Austin, and I laid it on him and told him what I had and da-da-da-da-da. I told my dad, my father has a heart problem 3 days later in California. Never had a heart problem before. And I'm vice chairman of Tulane University, and Katrina is on its way.
Oh my God.
I fly to California with my oldest son. We're sharing a room in my parents' house in Rancho Santa Fe. And I turn on the television, and it says the Mississippi River has reclaimed the city of New Orleans. I got my marriage falling apart. I got my life falling apart. I've got a public company I run. I have 25,000 people. Sally has a lot of part-time people. That's why it's so big. And I'm sitting here with children that I adore. And I'm sitting here going, what the, you know what I'm going to say, do you do? And I've been through a lot of rough stuff, and that's why that book was written. But in this case, I looked at myself and I said, what's the most important thing in your life? My brother died of a drug overdose. My sister never has had a day in her life, and she spends more money than you can absorb. It was my kids. So I had to focus first on my kids. I had to come up with a phrase I called dignity and grace. I had to go 3 times more into a communicative situation with my people, my team, my everything. I decided I was going to pick 5 people who were going to be my left, right, arm, center, and were going to help me through this. And we pushed through. We And guess what? The deal that we were going to do failed. So we had to go find another partner. But it was probably the worst 6 months of my life, and certainly the worst 5 days of my life. So you center yourself. You figure out what the most important thing in your entire life is, my children. You look at all the people around you who are going to fall apart because they think they're going to lose their job. And you march forward, and you cry by yourself, but you put your girlfriends, I have a bunch of them with me who went through that with me, and you pull the men on your team who are going to partner with you as well, and you drive forward. Eventually it all works out. It's the
Wow.
risk. Go ahead, top that one for
I
drama.
was going to say, it's hard to
I don't
toss
think I
that
can follow
to
that
another.
one.
Next question.
On,
Toss that,
exactly.
yeah, okay. All right, next question, guys. I do think though resilience is one of the, and this is off script now, we haven't talked about this, but I think it's worthwhile because for any of us who have lived a minute, you have to build resilience, and you're gonna get, knocked down many more times than you feel like you're lifted up. And so I would be curious, we heard about Carol's, and no one can top that story, I don't think. So let's not try, but are there tips for resilience that the other three of you have learned over the course of your careers or lives in general?
For sure. First of all, remind yourself that you got through COVID. Okay, talk about uncertainty and building resilience. I mean, that we made it, right? So you can go through anything. I think what really helps in building resilience is investing, I think, in your skills, investing in your financial independence, and also really investing in yourself, in your network. We've talked a lot about network already and the importance, and underscored the importance of that. But in terms of skills, whether that's just a gap that you need to strengthen a skill to help move you forward from a career perspective, but also your mindset, your social emotional skills, managing your mindset, learning to build resilience, focusing on what you can control. It's a favorite mantra of my partner, Nancy, and I. We help each other so much and remind ourselves, there's all that noise. You talked about the noise, but just focus on what you can control, build that resilience to really help you push through times of uncertainty. And investing in your financial independence is so important. Really understanding, especially if you're struggling with uncertainty, which can create anxiety. Are you spending money based on want or need? Make sure you're, maximizing savings through your employer, but also, really build that nest egg. If I didn't have the nest egg that I built, I would have missed out on two of the most significant experiences in my life: building my firm and adopting my daughter, Kate, who's with us today, as a single mother, and raising her that way as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything you said, and I want to also emphasize just the idea of making sure we know our own priorities. You mentioned for many of us, our family and our friends come first. Once you know that priority, for me, I like thinking of, okay, what's the next worst thing that can happen, or what would it look like to fail in this case? I don't really believe in failure. It's just things happen. You move on from there. But once you know your priorities, it's not that hard to think, okay, this may go poorly in this way. Something bad may happen. I may lose this other job, or I may not succeed at this presentation, or I may not have this deal go through, and then I'm going to move on from it, right? We march on from those things. And so we prioritize the things that are most important, and we're resilient, and we just understand that so-called failure is not the end of the story ever.
Yeah, and I completely agree with everything that's been said, and I think that resilience is such a complicated word. There's so much that can be packed into that. But I think that, Nadia, what you said is absolutely true. I think when we do make mistakes, as we all do, we're not perfect, and we're learning. We are works in progress, is what I like to call myself. I'm a work in progress. And when I make a mistake, and sometimes they're very public mistakes, and sometimes I'm very down about those and question myself and question my leadership and question who I am, and do I have imposter syndrome and all the things that maybe we all think about sometimes. But I give myself, especially for those big ones, I give myself 24 hours to feel bad about it. And 24 hours to be like, shouldn't have done, But I tell myself I will not make that mistake again. I will learn from it, and I remind myself where I've come from. And my center is my family. They're so proud of me. I've got some in the room, but I've got 4 children and an amazing husband who we just had a 34-year anniversary.
Yay.
Who are so supportive, and that centers me. I think I did make a mistake, but I can teach not only myself how to be better, but also them by example. Just pick myself back up and know I'm not going to make that mistake again, and be okay with making others in the future. I'm not perfect, but I'm not going to do that again, and I will be better.
I love that. There's a story that many of you may have heard, but we talk about it at the bank at least once a year. But it's the story of a professor who gave his students a bag of sand and then a bag of larger rocks, and said, put them in the jar. And if you put the sand into the jar first, the rocks did not fit. You couldn't fit everything in the jar. But if you put the rocks into the jar first and then poured in the sand, everything fit. And it was a metaphor for, I think, what everyone up here is sharing. Like, those rocks are the foundational things in your life that cannot be compromised. And if you know what those are, then the rest kind of falls into place. So we have just 5 minutes left. So I'm going to do 2 kind of rapid fire questions to close us out. One, we are here celebrating you all. If you had to name one other woman that you think should be equally celebrated and publicized, who would it be? And why? Maybe start here.
Well, I don't know about publicized, but I would say my mom.
Yep.
Because she came here from Mexico with nothing and was such a strong woman and ran the house and taught me that there was no shame in running everything.
Oh, love that.
So I'm going to go with a physicist. Her name is Madame C.S. Wu. Madame Wu, everyone called her. She discovered in the 1940s that the universe is asymmetric, and it changed the way that we understand nature and the standard model of the universe. When they awarded the Nobel Prize, they gave it to 2 men, and they passed over her. She was nominated 23 other times and never given it until they changed the rules so people couldn't find out who was nominated because it was so embarrassing.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I think about that, yeah. But so typical, right? And yet at the same time, I want to celebrate people like her, and her especially, because she did the work that changed our understanding of the world, and that's what matters at the end of the day.
That's really cool. Barbara.
Yeah, so I have to really shout out and celebrate my business partner, Nancy Rizzuto. She was by my side the whole way, building our firm, building the Women's Forum, and I wouldn't be here without you.
Amazing.
I'm kind of sentimental today because the doctor that has been by my side for the last 20 years is retiring today. And her name is Mary Beth Richmond. She took me through Bobby's cancer journey. It was horrible. She took me through my sister's craziness. She took me through my nephew's anxiety. She became a friend, and she was chief of staff at Northwestern. She's retiring today, and I don't know about celebrating. She would die if she knew I was talking about her. But there are so many people in our lives that are so important to us, and they don't get always the recognition that we get up here and such like that. And I think it's important that you let them know how important they really are to you.
Yeah, round of applause for all those people. Okay, last closing one. Most important leadership trait. Let's start down with you, Carol.
There are so many. I think I would say, God, there's so many I want to talk about. But I would talk about the ability to listen, and I would talk about the ability to focus. And I could go on, but I won't.
That's great.
She said 2, so I get 2.
Yeah.
So I would say courage paired with humility. I think as an entrepreneur, courage is table stakes, and humility is really what helps you be an effective leader, to bring people along with you and to be accountable for those mistakes and those victories.
So I'll say vision and strategy. You're the one at the top. You're leading those things. Everything falls from there.
And I would probably say all of those, because I wish I'd gone first. But no, what I would say is generosity. Because as a leader, you want to bring people up with you, especially the 90% women that I have on my team. And you want to be generous because you can be. You're the leader. And so I think that that's really critical to remind myself always to be generous with my team.
God, you guys are so smart. You're so smart, you're so humble, you're so human, and I could talk to you forever, but our time is up. Thank you so much. One last round of applause for these honorees.
Thank you, Maggie. You did a great job. Thank you.